Welcome to another CHRO Conversation, hosted by the Center for Executive Succession at the Darla Moore School of Business. I'm your host, Anthony Nyberg, and today we are speaking with Monique Herena, who is the Chief Colleague Experience Officer at American Express, meaning that she is on the executive committee of a 172-year-old iconic company that has over $43 billion in annual revenue, with more than 64,000 employees offering products and services in more than 200 countries around the world. And in 2020, was named number 9 on Fortune magazine's list of top companies to work for. Monique also serves on multiple advisory boards and was named the top CHRO in 2017 and 2018 by HR Digest. Monique, it is really wonderful to have you here. Thank you very much for coming down.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for having me, and thank you for asking me to come down. It's my pleasure.
So there's been a lot of changes in the world, particularly when we think about the pandemic and then the issues with the George Floyd killing. It seems like HR may have an even more central role in the organizations. Does that seem right to you? And if so, what can we do with that?
I think it does seem right, and the last 2 years in particular, I think have been really intense for the human resources function, and there's been, I think, a lot of pressure to figure out things quickly in a space where it's not so easy to figure out things quickly. So I think that HR has been called upon to a much greater extent to solve, really crisis type issues, if you will. And I think, some HR leaders are better equipped with their management teams and their organizations, depending on what business they're in. Have they been through crisis? Do they do some crisis planning? We were in a very fortunate position where we had done some crisis planning and exercises, not exactly predicting a pandemic, but those same lessons came into play around what would we do if, how would we come together when, how would we operate to move quickly in the interest of our colleagues. We put our colleagues first, and the greatest sort of cause, if you will, is colleague health and safety and their families, and ensuring that if we backed our colleagues, they would be in a position to best back our customers, who are also going through tremendous change, and in many cases hardship. Yes, I think the HR function is always, called upon for a lot of change leadership type efforts, but I think even more so, and we didn't even talk about the Great Resignation and everything else that's been thrown in the mix the last couple of years.
So, and you talked about putting colleagues first. And a lot of organizations say that, but I know American Express really lives that. Yeah. Can you talk about why that's so important?
It is just part of who we are. It is grounded in our values that if we invest in our colleagues, they in turn will take the best care of our customers. And we see it play out day in, day out. And we really feel that has put people at ease so they can focus on doing their jobs. And that's really what we've tried to do. A great example is we said there would be no COVID-related layoffs in 2020. We did that to really make sure people were focused on our customers, but also that they could take care of themselves, do what they needed, and from a mental health perspective, not be worried about their employment. So I think every customer interaction is going to be better if people really feel that they belong and that we have their back from a colleague perspective. So we really design with that in mind. We know that our customers' experience is really dependent on who they're talking to in that phone call, et cetera. So it is really important for us to keep that top of mind in everything we do. And based on our survey results, our colleagues really feel it and appreciate it.
This would be such a better world if every organization thought that way and really lived it.
I agree.
Yeah. I also know that you all talk a lot about the importance of developing a strong, diverse organization, diverse colleagues. Yes. And your CEO's even won awards for doing that. Can you share a little bit about why that's important?
We have a very long, I think, outstanding legacy. I've been with the company only 3.5 years, But I can tell you the focus on diversity has been long-standing, and the progress that we've made as a company with our colleagues, with our customers, and in our communities, is really impressive. But the work is never done, and the context continues to change in the world, as we talked about. And it's an important area of focus for us because we want to represent the customers and the communities of which we serve. And you can't do that without having diversity of your workforce. That isn't sufficient. You need an environment where those people who you hire can really feel like they are included and that everyone's voice counts in the room and that their experience and expertise matters when we're coming up with a solution to a problem or whatever it might be, and that's inclusion. So you can have diversity, but you have to have an environment where that's valued and people really feel included from day one. And then we focus a lot on equity. And equity means that, we focus on, promotion opportunities, who gets promoted at what rate. We focus on pay equity. We have in 2020, 2021, and plan to continue to do so go forward, 100% pay equity for our workforce. That means everyone gets adjusted if they need to be adjusted, so we can say and have pay equity. So you've got this diversity, inclusion, and equity commitment that we've had ongoing, and it's really a business imperative for us. And we don't just talk about it, we have a lot of action behind it. It's very important to us that we don't just make declarations, that it's really who we are, it's embedded in our values. And in fact, in 2020, shortly after the murder of George Floyd, we made a commitment to invest $1 billion in a number of DEI initiatives across communities, suppliers, small businesses, our colleagues, charitable contributions, kind of focused in certain ways. And we've already passed that, and we just committed to another $3 billion by 2025. So we really sort of put the effort and action behind what we believe in.
So it's so extraordinary on really many levels, but how do you get the board really buying into that when kind of traditionally, not necessarily just at American Express, but all boards have, their job is to, they think at least, to promote shareholder wealth overall. So how do you get all of leadership and the board engaged together to think in terms of these broader stakeholders?
In the CHRO role, you have a lot of stakeholders. The board is one of them, shareholders another one, colleagues, etc. Everyone has to deliver for shareholders. That's what we have to do as a company. It's not just the board. And if you are focused on the business reasons, the reasons for your customers, your colleagues, and your community to have diversity, have an environment where people feel like they can belong, show up and be at their best, continue to grow, and that we can support the communities in which we live and work, that does generate shareholder value and does generate engagement and greater customer service and better partnerships, et cetera, because we're representing those people that we serve. And we couldn't do what we do and be who we are without that being put into practice day in, day out. And it's a pretty easy conversation because they see that.
How do you help everyone see, so particularly when we talk about things like ESG,
yes,
how do you help everyone understand that that it's either the right thing to do or there's a strong business case for it or whatever else needs to be said to convince everyone to be on board with those?
Yeah, I mean, I think at a basic level you have to feel like you have a responsibility as a corporation. We employ many, many thousands of people globally. We have an impact on so many consumers and customers, and we take the weight of that responsibility seriously. So the convincing, again, is figuring out what works for us and what is our responsibility, and then taking people along in that journey through our action. So there are 3 areas that we focus on in ESG and have been doing so in, I think, a really serious way since 2020. We've had a long history again around CSR, but from an ESG perspective, there's three things that we're very focused on. One we've talked about a little bit, which is promoting diversity and inclusion, and the $1 billion commitment, the additional $3 billion that I mentioned by 2025. So a lot of actions across colleagues, suppliers, small business, our communities, a very holistic, integrated sort of business strategy to make those investments. The second area is really advancing climate solutions. And in any way we can, we're assessing what our imprint is and where we can do better and where we can help drive change. And we have lots of actions that people can read about in our ESG report there. And then the third thing is really building financial confidence, which is very much at the core as well of who we are and our values. If we can build financial confidence, whether that's small business, individuals, et cetera, that's really where we play. And the convincing, I think, is really in what you do and what the outcomes are, and being patient with it, but also highlighting that along the way and ensuring that you're bringing people along with you, because I think it's pretty hard to argue with the value once you're brought along with those outcomes.
So especially that last one, the building financial confidence, that is a pretty unusual one. You don't hear many people talk about that as part of their ESG, but it's so closely tied to your business mission. Can you say a little bit about what that really means?
I mean, for us, it means so many things, but one of the examples is, for us, it could be small business initiatives like infusing capital, helping people really grow, helping people through good and bad times, building their education around their business, et cetera. We do a lot around education. So again, it's a get what you give thing. When we invest in our partners and our communities and our customers, it really makes a huge difference.
And I've actually heard you talk before about using data analytics and the importance of analytics even for the HR function.
Yes.
Can you say a little bit about how at American Express you bring data analytics to help drive business success from the HR perspective?
Yeah, I think it's not enough to just say, this is my opinion. And that's any area of the business, including HR. So HR is sort of blessed with a wealth of data. We have all of this colleague data, and we should take a look at it and have it inform our decisions. So we do, for example, a lot of colleague listening, as we call it. So that's surveys in various forms. It could be the engagement survey, a lot of pulse surveying we're doing. However we are listening to colleagues, even informally in the HR function, because we're out with colleagues every day at all levels of the organization globally. So we get a lot of intelligence and feed that back. Exit interview, onboarding experience, learning and training evaluations and experience. So we have a lot of data around what the candidate experience is like for internal folks who are moving around and developing across Amex, and also external people, and what is their experience like. So we really want to have a colleague experience that's great. We are world class in customer service, and we should also have colleagues that have a great experience day in, day out. You have a lot better chance of doing that if you actually have data on what's actually happening in that experience day in, day out. And then I can be more targeted in where we spend our time partnering with our colleagues and with the business to help them achieve their outcomes, and how we can improve that experience. It could be as simple as making something easier for you day in, day out to get done, so you have more time to focus on our customers. So that end-to-end process improvement and being data-driven and improving that experience and that level of satisfaction and engagement is something we take very seriously. And it gets really fun when you start to triangulate some of the data and see how these things come together, and can get a little bit predictive on what makes someone stay or have a really great experience, feel engaged, feel like they belong at American Express.
So American Express is an iconic brand, and you yourself were talking about the Great Resignation coming up, but you also are, as you said, world-class leader in driving colleague experience. Does the Great Resignation exist? Is that a real thing? Are you feeling it? Is it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things, quiet quitting, Great Resignation, that make for really great articles. And I think you have to look at your own data and the situation overall. I think most people by now know that these resignations had started, kind of across the board pre-pandemic. 2020 for most industries and companies was a bit of a slowdown year, but not in every case. And 2021 came back in a way that I don't think anyone expected in terms of the number of opportunities folks had for different roles, people being different after 2 years of going through the pandemic, wanting different things, learning different things about themselves, wanting more flexibility, having been through a lot of trauma themselves or people in their households, et cetera. So I think mental health is a very long tail of the pandemic. So people are just fundamentally different, and you had all this opportunity. So it was real in that you saw voluntary attrition across the board. No one was immune. There's not one peer that I've talked to that says, we did great. There was no resignation on our part. So we used it as an opportunity to say, how do we really hone in on our colleague value proposition and make sure we're differentiating ourselves in the right ways with our current colleagues, so they want to stay and grow and develop with us, and as we seek to attract talent to come to the company. So our colleague proposition is very true to who we are, and we think it has a lot of value, but we also took this great resignation period that we were not immune from and figured out where we could strengthen it. And I think that's a really important role the CHRO plays, is to hold up that mirror, a lot of times with data, to say, we're really strong here, we're differentiated here, but where this all comes together, we need to make some investment and be more competitive in a certain area. So we're very focused on total rewards and holistic wellness and ensuring that we're paying competitively. We're very focused on growth and development, that you don't just grow in the beginning, that you grow throughout your career at Amex, and that we invest a lot in all colleagues at all levels to do so. We're very focused on culture. We have a really special culture built on relationships, grounded in our values, and we have a very flexible culture, which whether people have wrestled with that and accepted it or not, people value flexibility. So we have something called Amex Flex that we've branded and rolled out. So when a recruiter's talking to a candidate, here's what we stand for around flexibility. And to our internal colleagues, they know where they stand in terms of flexibility. So it's been very important for us to kind of balance all of the work we do across different areas, DEI we talked about, et cetera, and really offer those things in a way that's very compelling, but also fit for purpose after 2 years that candidly changed.
So in talking about how it changed everything,
Yeah.
So what should we be thinking about in terms of the future of the workforce? What do people want now?
I think that we are very clear on what our people want, and I would encourage someone in my type of role to not be afraid to listen to colleagues and see what's on their mind. They have a lot of choices. It's better to know. And if you're interested enough in how your colleagues are feeling and how engaged they are, you'll want to ask. So we ask in a lot of different ways. We just did a survey in the US where we've been kind of in this Amex Flex mode for the longest. We're rolling it out market by market, depending on market conditions as we return to office. And over 90% of our colleagues feel like they have the flexibility that they need. And over 90% of our colleagues felt like they had the technology to get their job done in the right way. So that makes us feel really good, but we never sort of get comfortable because we want to keep listening and see what we can do better. You have to kind of figure out where you're starting, what the right model is for your business, but to try to ignore that flexibility is an important part of the value that most people are looking for, I think it's tough. I think you have to really kind of be in learning mode versus judging mode. It's here to stay. That's the future. And I think figuring out how it best works for your business, all of us kind of figured it out the 2 years we were fully virtual. Not every company had that. In our case, we were. We had 2 really great years as a company in those years. So we figured it out and we learned as we went. We pivoted where we needed to. We weren't afraid to pivot with new information as we learned and got better. And we're going to continue to do that. The truth is nobody is really operated in hybrid at scale for a very long period of time yet. So I think there's a lot of learnings yet to come. And I think being open to that, listening, learning, applying those learnings is something companies should be much more prepared to do in the coming years versus there's one model or another.
So I've heard you say a few times it sounds like it's important that there's a match between whatever you're trying to do with your colleagues and the organization and the business. Yeah. What is flexibility? People use that word a lot. What does that mean to you or to Amex colleagues?
What we call Amex Flex is a total framework that has 3 designations. So we have some people who are on site all the time, 5 days a week. That's a very small percentage of our population. We have folks who are in the hybrid mode, which means they spend some time in the office, some time at home. It's a very generous definition of hybrid depending on your role. And we trust people in their teams to figure out what works best. And we really encourage people when they do come in to come in for purpose, where they're coming together to ideate, to brainstorm solution, meet, do training. Because we figured out you can do most things virtually, but it's still nice to get that networking and that interaction time that happens sometimes in a more powerful way in person. So we think both are really important. And we've tried to get really good at both. And then both is not really just both in its pure form. You've got every day some people at home, because we have about 40% virtual colleagues now in the US, for example. Vast majority are hybrid. So at any given day, I'm hybrid. I may be piping into a meeting from home, or I may be in the meeting room. So as a leader, you have to learn, how do I best engage? It's never perfect when we're all in person either, but how do I best engage people through those different designations, virtual being the 3rd designation. So we provided a lot of toolkits, a lot of change management sort of support for leaders and colleagues, because it may sound obvious, but it is a different way of working. And I think letting people know that it's okay maybe if you're not remembering to be as empathetic with that person who's not in the room, et cetera, and then how do you make them feel more included, and how do you get better at that, and how do you maybe as a team say what worked well with that, what could we do different. So I think being in learning mode and providing the best tools and resources and learnings we have real time and continuing to have people share those is how we think about flexibility, delivering on our goals for our customers in a way that helps us drive the right outcomes by having flexibility in its different forms.
So how do you help leaders learn to have that trust, for instance, right? So it's a big leap for some who are used to being able to look over people's shoulders or what have you.
I don't think leadership is looking over people's shoulders. So how I would help people with that is if someone works for you, has clear goals, and you've helped provide a vision as a leader and the goals that it will take to get there and how that manifests itself for that individual. You're having informal and formal check-ins and performance discussions throughout the year, so there's no surprises around performance, and you're regularly connected, whether that conversation is via Zoom or a WebEx or face-to-face in a room, doesn't really matter. So I think people also really need to step back and say, what are we really talking about here? What do you not trust? Is that person delivering the outcomes? Have you talked about how the day might work and when you're going to connect and maybe when you're not, and going to let people turn off so they get a little downtime? Having those honest conversations, those should be ongoing whether we're in person, hybrid, or everyone fully virtual. So I think really being connected to your colleagues is more important than ever as a leader. Really ensuring that you're listening, asking, managing performance across any environment, I think is really important. Our colleagues have showed us they can perform in different ways and different ways of working. So I think leading and trusting that people will deliver, and just like when we were all face to face, if they don't deliver, then there's ways of addressing that as well. But I think we have a big responsibility as leaders to set clear goals and direction, give feedback along the way, and stay just super connected to colleagues, irrespective of where they are. We always say we have great people, no matter where they are. And that's really our job, to continue to invest in them and kind of manage the day-to-day and really help them sort of thrive in the environment.
And you talked about the importance of culture within the organization and how strong yours is. How do you keep developing that when people are not together as much?
Yeah. Culture, the way I think about it, is really the way work gets done at any company. And I don't think culture is about any one building or any one artifact. I think it's an important part of the history of the culture, of sort of having a physical manifestation of the culture and the brand, but that's not it. It's not the only thing. Culture is also, what kind of relationships do people have? Do people embody those values and that brand ethos that we have of service at American Express? And the answer is yes, and you experience that in every interaction. Do I have a great onboarding experience so I understand the history of the company, a rich 170 plus year history? Do I understand the business? Do I understand the way work gets done? And I think those are really important cultural elements. What are our values? What are our leadership behaviors? It's great to have technical excellence in whatever your area of expertise is at Amex, but the way you lead, we have a rating on your business performance and on your leadership performance for every colleague. And the way you lead and the way you bring people along is just as important in our culture. And you feel that. It's evidenced in every interaction that you're in, whether that's one-on-one or a small group, on video, in the office. So there's so many ways that you can continue to reinforce the things that are most important in your culture. And then I think as a CHRO, you have to make sure that's really integrated into your HR systems. I'm very much a systems thinker and kind of integrated in the way our pay performance design sort of integrates with our training, our performance management system, and is everything about the company's culture sort of being reinforced in our expectations and the way we reward and invest in people. And so I think culture is not just about a building, and I think that culture is really about people and sharing the best way to get things done together, grounded in the values, grounded in the way you kind of think about your business, your customers, your colleagues, and your communities, and then showing that through your actions consistently. People who we've hired virtually who haven't been in one of our offices yet feel so connected to American Express, and that's really through our people. And we're very proud of that, and we've got to continue. We want to be great at that. There's like no choice not to be great at that in the current environment.
And it's well known that American Express promotes employee holistic well-being at a much higher rate than many organizations. Can you say why caring about colleague well-being is important, and then maybe some examples of some of the things you do?
We all have mental health. No one just has physical health and not mental health. So a holistic view on mental health, physical health, and financial well-being is something we talk about a lot. We talk about all three. And on the mental health front, we have a 10-year history of having a program called Healthy Minds that we've invested in. We've tried to normalize the conversation within American Express on mental health. I blog about it. I share my own personal experiences. Many of our leaders do. And we really want to have our colleagues know that we have our back in terms of their holistic health and that they're very integrated again. The way you spend your time, what you consume, how much you sleep, what your nutrition looks like, if you move your body, we all sit a lot of that. That all impacts your physical health, your performance, et cetera. So, the health of our workforce, if no one has not gotten that memo after the last 2 years, is so incredibly important. And you just have to have heart around it, that people have things going on in their respective households where it may be them, it may be a loved one who's going through something, and we want to be there right at that moment when they need care and they need resources and tools and support in the moments that really matter. We lay out a whole bunch of, we call them, key moments that matter across the colleague experience. And, one of those moments is when someone is in distress. It could be physical health, it could be ongoing maintenance and prevention with physical health, or it could be mental health ongoing or a really critical situation. And we want colleagues to know that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to look for signs in colleagues and be connected to each other to see if maybe there's something that you're noticing where someone just seems off, and talk to each other, like not really like, how are you doing today? Good. And move on to the next thing, like, how are you really doing? These couple of years have been tough. I know you lost someone. Did you know we've increased our grief counseling programs? Have you looked into that? So we educate leaders a lot too on what can they offer and what can they bring to the table for themselves, and also when they notice some things in the colleague population, and talk about it enough where even if they don't notice, people know that they can access care and help and assistance when they need it.
And here at the Center for Executive Succession, we spend a lot of time talking about the CHRO's role in CEO succession. Is there a role for the CHRO in other C-suite succession? So, for instance, the CFO and otherwise, and if so, what goes on there?
I'm sure it plays out differently, as I can say from my own experience and in talking to a lot of my peers at every company. I can tell you that CEO succession is the responsibility of the board. From a process, a day in, day out coaching, assessment, how you kind of bring the board along and get a lot of input and make sure they kind of fulfill their responsibilities from a governance standpoint, it's such a critical decision. And it needs to be an ongoing, regular conversation. That is the case with our board. We have a fantastic board, a very diverse board, just an amazing board, and we focus a lot of time there. We also focus a lot of time, to your question, specifically on the C-suite. And really, what does the bench look like? What is the depth? What is the quality? What is the quantity? What are we doing to develop and coach and stretch the right people, infuse new talent where we need to? And we have conversations, literally, in our case, every board meeting, many committee meetings. We talk about talent and culture a great deal with our board, and it's because we spend so much time on it and they realize the importance of it. So I do think there is a role. The way I take up the role, I want everyone to be successful on the senior management team. I'm not competing with any of my peers. I want them to be at their best, and I want to make sure my bench, their bench, is as strong as it can be, and we can sort of take a look holistically, think about who we move around the company, who we accelerate their progress, where we infuse talent, where we may have some gaps. And that's a really important discussion that we have as a management team often, and then we update the board on a very regular basis. In fact, we have an update next week. So I think the important thing is that you're doing the work and it's an ongoing process, and the board has their role in CEO succession, but they have their role in understanding that we have good processes and are doing the right things, and they get some exposure. It's really great for our leaders to get exposure to our board of directors and vice versa as well, because it's important they understand the way we're running the company. They have input on the strategy, the day-to-day, though. It's a great sort of window and view of how that comes to life.
Monique, once again, thank you very much for coming down to Columbia, and thank you for spending time with us today. We sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you, Anthony. It was great. My pleasure.
You just listened to another CHRO conversation. Today, Monique Herena of American Express shared with us the importance of creating a sustainable, healthy workforce to drive business success. She also shared her views regarding how HR must drive company culture and employee innovation. On behalf of all of us who are associated with the Master of Human Resources program and the Center for Executive Succession here at the University of South Carolina, thank you for joining us.